They mocked me my whole life for being the unwanted child, until one hospital document destroyed everything they believed about our family growing up. My older brother Damon had a favorite joke he repeated at literally every family gathering, which was telling people I was the bonus mistake because apparently my parents only planned for one kid and then I showed up unexpectedly 6 years later, and everyone laughed every single time including my parents, like humiliating me was some harmless family tradition, but after hearing it your entire childhood it stops feeling like a joke and starts feeling like your actual value inside the family, especially because Damon was treated like the golden child while I was always the extra burden nobody asked for. And honestly I learned to live with it until the night of my grandmother's 85th birthday party when Damon decided to take things too far in front of nearly 40 relatives, because after a few drinks he stood up to give a toast and started talking about how grandma survived the tragedy of having one perfect grandchild and one surprise refund she couldn't return, while people laughed awkwardly around the room, and then he looked directly at me and said, "Seriously though, if mom had stopped at one kid, this family would have been a lot less complicated." And for some reason that sentence completely broke whatever patience I had left because I realized nobody, not my parents, not my aunts, not even grandma, had ever once defended me from this stuff. But before I could leave the room, my grandmother suddenly slammed her cane against the floor so hard the entire house went silent, and I had never seen her angry before, not once in my life. But the way she looked at Damon honestly scared me, because then she slowly stood up and said, "You want to talk about children who complicated this family? Fine. Let's finally tell the truth." And immediately my mother turned pale while my father whispered, "Mom, don't." But Grandma ignored him and walked to the hallway closet before returning with an old locked metal box that apparently nobody else knew existed, and inside were hospital records, letters, and one envelope labeled with my father's handwriting saying, "Do not open," and I could literally feel the tension in the room changing as Grandma handed the papers to Damon before saying, "Read the birth certificate out loud." And at first Damon looked annoyed like this was some dramatic stunt until he suddenly stopped talking mid-sentence and his entire face changed color, because according to the documents, the child born that night wasn't me, it was him. Except the father listed on the original hospital record wasn't our dad, it was my mother's ex-fiancé, a man she secretly kept seeing after marrying my father. And suddenly the room exploded into confusion as relatives grabbed the papers from each other while my father sat there looking completely broken, because apparently he discovered the affair only weeks after Damon was born but chose to stay and raise him as his own child to avoid public humiliation, meaning the perfect firstborn son my family worshipped for decades was actually the living reminder of the biggest betrayal in our family history, while the accident they mocked my whole life was the only biological child my parents ever had together. And the worst part was learning my grandmother knew the truth the entire time but stayed silent to protect the family. Until she finally got tired of watching Damon destroy me with a joke built on lies, and I swear I will never forget the look on Damon's face when Grandma quietly said, "You spent your whole life making him feel unwanted because deep down you were terrified you were the one who didn't belong." Because suddenly every ounce of confidence he had vanished right there in front of everyone. And then my father started crying for the first time I'd ever seen while my mother begged people to stop reading the documents, but it was already too late because the entire family narrative had shattered in seconds, and through all the chaos I just stood there strangely numb, realizing the people who spend years deciding my worth never even knew the truth about their own lives. And honestly the craziest part wasn't discovering the secret, it was realizing how quickly the same